Again, yeah, my name is Anthony Scarpaci. I'll give a little bit of my background, but again, today we're talking about optimizing the financial services customer journey from ad to advocacy. So we'll talk about opportunities, pitfalls, real examples at each stage of the customer journey, sort of the critical role of that first session experience, and then ways to think about aligning incentives that drive long-term retention and growth, and how best to foster collaboration between marketing and product teams. So some background on me real briefly. I've been, in-house as an operator, as Eleanor said, for the last 12 years, managing over $400 million in profitable customer acquisition programs, most recently as the Global VP of Growth at Acorns, but also held prior roles at companies like NerdWallet, Blue Apron, Dish, and other subscription fintech brands. I've touched sort of most marketing channels under the sun, as well as partnered with product teams on conversion rate optimization and onboarding experiences. And additionally have been, a key leader in measurement strategies and reporting frameworks to help understand where to focus efforts to drive the most incremental growth for the brands. Now I've since transitioned to leading my own advising practice called Tunamatic. And I'm based in Nashville, Tennessee, was in New York for the last 8 years before that. But for those who are guitar nerds and geeks, you'll probably know the Tunamatic name. For those interested, happy to follow up on that in the Q&A or afterwards. But let's go ahead and jump in. So how many of you have been mired in registration design files like this in Figma, looking at every screen within the registration flow for your business? Or maybe you're somebody who's in your ads manager account, analyzing endless creative click-through rates and in-platform CPAs. Or perhaps you're an Amplitude or Mixpanel, and in those platforms dissecting why conversion rate trends are moving sort of up and down by operating system day over day. Or even sort of maybe living in Google Sheets or Excel with the revenue and growth financial models, focused on all the steps within the funnel that are driving the ultimate outcomes of revenue for your business. We've all been there, and sometimes it can be paralyzing. We become fragmented within our organizations. We get a little myopic on our level of focus for what part of the customer journey we're responsible for. And then as a result, we can get caught up in focusing on local maximums versus global maximums. We lose sight of what actually changes outcomes, which is the customer experience. And we're talking about the full customer experience, not the part that you may own as an individual contributor or leader within the organization. One of my favorite quotes is from a former executive at P&G that says, "The only strategy that a customer sees is execution." And when I think about what that execution, that onboarding experience looks like, it starts at that first impression a customer sees, whether it's an organic one, or in the case of this framework, let's think of it as an ad impression. From that ad, they go to some sort of landing page, whether that's your primary website, your app store, your dedicated landing page from an ad source, then through a registration experience, then sort of followed by further onboarding into the product, engagement once somebody is fully onboarded, and then ideally advocacy for your brand to drive word of mouth and referral, which then feeds the loop again to continue to drive more growth. Now, one thing that I think people often miss is that so much of this journey is often happening in a single session in a single day. There's a great set of data recently from Revenue Cat that highlighted over 75% of customers start a trial experience with an app on the first day. And so this applies broadly around customer experiences, regardless of category, but it impacts the financial industry as well. And knowing that this happens in a single session, we know that different people often own maybe each part within this experience. You may have a case where a brand team is owning the ad creative for the brand, and then that gets passed off to the growth marketing team, who runs the channels and has ownership over landing page testing. And then that further gets passed off then to a product team that's responsible for the registration and maybe onboarding flow, and then the rest of the in-app experience and maybe referral programs or ways to drive advocacy. Very fragmented, and entropy ensues. So I want to highlight an example of how this can be disjointed in real life. And I like to think glass half full. So let's think of it as, an experience full of opportunity. So we're going to pick on Credit Karma. Apologies in advance. If there's any Credit Karma team members here, you're doing great work, but always opportunity to improve. So this is a real experience of searching for the best credit card. There's a paid search ad for top 10 credit cards from Credit Karma. It's not ideal matching of the sort of search keywords and intent, but it's pretty close. But let's click on that and see what happens. It takes us to a landing page, and that's a landing page focused on good credit. It's even when they have a page clearly from the categories up top on best credit cards, they've driven me to an experience that's actually focused on those who have good credit scores, which is further misaligned with my direct search intent. From there, I say, well, maybe if I log into the Credit Karma experience, I can get after directly what I need. So I go to create an account, and I see something that we know is generally best practice on having sort of a guided progress bar, but this one doesn't really focus on getting to the milestones of customer value. You're creating an account, which is giving your information. You're telling us who you are, which is giving your information. You're confirming your identity, which is giving your information, but in no way is it framed around customer benefit. And then once you start the journey, it does some good things about mentioning objections and reducing some fear about sort of the safety of the data. But it's reminding me more of the fear that I maybe should have than, again, the benefits I'm going to get from Credit Karma. So nowhere in this journey yet has it been articulated why I should be excited about a logged-in experience here. As I go through, then it's asking what it can help me with. And this is a great opportunity, again, knowing the context from which I came in this sort of clickable journey. They could have highlighted, they know that I'm here seeking sort of credit card solutions. So anyways, I log in, and then it tells me you actually have an account. We recommend you download the app and log in. And so I go to the app to log in, and now I get a message within the App Store that doesn't feel like it speaks to exactly what I need. It also feels a little disingenuous, a message about outsmarting the system, knowing sort of how large Intuit is and TurboTax sort of cornering the market on filing personal taxes. But okay, I click on it anyway. I download the app. And then they say, well, you might be here for free credit scores. Again, wrong. I'm not here for free credit scores. And I already have an account that's been communicated to me, but now I'm being asked to sign up instead of sign in. And this is an opportunity for both of these pages. On the first one, thinking about custom product pages, which Apple now offers for you to tailor where you send somebody within the Apple Store to have creative sets of screenshots that are most relevant to the source at which the customer is coming from. And then again, using things like deferred deep links, sending customers into an in-app experience that is more relevant based on the context from which they're coming from. But okay, I think I'll still persevere through this experience. I just want to see if this service can help me figure out the best credit cards. And so I go to log in. And the first thing then I see is a notification from Apple asking me to opt into notifications. And while there's some context on that screen about the benefits of it, they miss an opportunity to prime me with all of the benefits to increase that rate. And I've seen time and time again, by having a screen before you surface these notifications, that you can increase the opt-in rates by giving more context and focusing on the customer benefit before asking for the authorization. But it sort of, anyway, I say not now. I go in, now it's telling me about a new, better experience, smarter recommendations as I explore, gives me additional imagery that doesn't really help sort of tell the story or help me understand why I should care. Highlights that there's a new organization tab, which again for me is, whether existing customer or new customer, I just want to know that that tab works and is clear for me. I'm not sure communicating that drives any value for the consumer. And then finally, after that, we get to the fourth panel. Now there's an insight about making smart decisions faster and a new AI assisted sort of Intuit financial assistant. So this seems interesting, but this is frankly buried in this whole journey. So I finally log in and I say, let me try. Maybe that is the answer to help me address my question. So I go in to the chatbot to answer a question and see if it could tell me the best credit card for me. And unfortunately, I'm sorry, their model is still in development and they can't help me. And I say, well, maybe if I just say, what's the best credit card overall? Again, sorry, and it can't help me. Um, Now I have gone through a much longer journey than most customers would have before they would have dropped off. But this is a really painful and disjointed experience. I think we can all agree. Now, some questions arise. Why is this type of experience so painful specifically for financial service brands? We've talked about things about how organization design and team structures can limit it. But for financial service brands, I think there's also two other things that come to mind from my experience that make it even harder. One is the curse of knowledge. Internal teams often can overestimate customer conviction in their product, as well as the customer's understanding of this business, their products, and personal finance as a whole. I'm probably preaching to the choir here when I say that financial literacy within the U.S. market, at least, is and continues to remain at near all-time low. There is a lot of education we need to do for consumers and everyday Americans to really make them understand products, their benefits, and how your brand may be different in delivering sort of value for the customers. Additionally, I find sometimes there's also an analytical conservativeness within those organizations as well. There can often be more of a quantitative bend of talent for those who are working in growth, marketing, product analytics, which can lead to academic analysis paralysis and myopia. I had an experience at a prior brand where I remember there was extended debates about how long we run a split test experiment because it didn't reach a 95% confidence interval of significance yet. And we were talking about an experiment that was helping to validate whether there was a 2% lift in this change to a screen within the onboarding flow, which is really not the right thing to be spending your time on. You should be making conviction about, is this the best thing for the brand? And if it's not driving a material lift, then you have to make the decision of, is this direction that we want to go, make a call and move on. Because every time focused on the rigor of the precision of that one experiment's results, that's missed opportunity to go focus on the next thing that can drive a much bigger outcome. And then I also love coming back to this example that some of you may know of from years ago when Chase had a very big programmatic ad spend program. And then, bringing in an intern, they dug into it and realized that most of the sites that they were serving display ads on were not actually driving any clicks or any real value. But it took sort of taking a step back and focusing on sort of a more global lens and a customer sort of orientation to understand that serving display ads on random websites outside of trusted sources probably wasn't driving or influencing real customer behavior. So with all of this, the customer experience suffers, and so do your outcomes. So there is a better way forward. And I like to break it down into 3 key steps. The first one is to understand, see what your customer sees. So let's talk about that. Literally go through the live experience, just like I did with Credit Karma, from the very beginning touch points, and have your customers do the same. Record them walking through their journey by source, by operating system, as many permutations as you can. In previous roles, we've done this where we have given some sample key media ads that we've wanted customers to see as their first communication about the product and how we position ourselves, and then follow them through to that landing page journey and through to onboarding. It's also important to do that for an organic search experience, maybe affiliate placements, your referral program, and do it by desktop and mobile, do it by operating systems. The more variety, the more areas of opportunity where you can see that things are disjointed. The second one is then the planning part. And I am sure that this is probably the hardest part for most companies. It definitely has been one of the most challenging for me. And this is about doing the analysis, identifying the opportunities, prioritizing them, and getting alignment within the company. And a few key things that I would think about for this step are: one, build your quantitative growth model if you haven't yet already. Build that full sort of math of the conversion funnel, your efficiencies throughout it, understanding the dependencies. And as you think about that, if you can really understand those levers, you're going to have the opportunity to understand how improvements at the highest points of leverage can really change the economics and the growth rate for your business. Walking through it, if we assume we can go drive sort of better, clearer communication to the customers through ad consistency and landing pages, that can drive higher click-through rates into registration. And then if we can have that persist through a stronger onboarding experience, you convert those customers at a higher rate once they're in the funnel. All of that helps the acquisition marketing team reduce that cost of acquisition. And then once that customer is in and you've done that consistent reinforcement of benefits and key onboarding, and you get them into those habits that you want them to take that are going to drive higher LTV, you'll get higher retention rates, you'll drive higher ARPU, which ultimately increases your LTV. And the combination of improving your lifetime value and your ARPU and reducing your CAC improves your LTV to CAC ratio and reduces your payback periods for when you break even on a customer and they start becoming profitable for you. All of that then in turn allows you to have more headroom within fixed budgets or the incremental revenue that you're driving to go invest in scaling. And this investment can be in people and talent, it can be in tools, or it can be in spending money at the margins within the most efficient place that you have within your ad spend mix, whether that's a media channel, a referral program, or some partnership. And here's just an example of how the math could work out. If you assumed you're able to deliver a 10% improvement in click-through rates, conversion rates, retention rates, and ARPU, that could effectively reduce CAC in this basic model that I built 17%, improve LTV 21%, and then you've moved your LTV to CAC ratio from 2 to 1 to 3 to 1. So it is very possible to achieve this, especially if you're very early in your journey and you've identified that there is real inconsistency in that customer onboarding experience from ad to becoming a customer, that you can really move the needle. And then the next step, you built that model. Now run your sensitivity analyses and circulate the numbers. As a reminder here, the points closest to product adoption and that habit creation are going to have the most leverage. Oftentimes, though, those are also paired with the highest level of effort. And so this is where things like RICE frameworks to help you balance level of effort versus expected impact come into play. But if we just run through another example of the math here, if you had a baseline scenario outlined here of marketing spend across media, referral, and affiliate programs, as well as organic growth and respective conversion rates for each one, in a case that you drove a 30% improvement on your landing pages from your media channels, that would drive an incremental 100 customers or so. But in a case that you were able to focus on a 30% improvement on conversion rates within the onboarding funnel, instead, that would net out to closer to 200 incremental customers. Now, that may take additional work or more resources and be more complex, but you're dealing with sort of different sort of multiples of impact based on where you focus. So run that sensitivity analysis, share those numbers. There's also some frameworks from Reforge for both of these that I would highlight as well to check out. And then leverage all of this to unify as one team. And this is very hard, but this is where this is a critical piece to it. Part of this is showing how this work helps everyone win. So how do these models help solve the goals and the priorities of the other partners that you're working with? I always love to say for my teams that even though our job is, maybe technically done at the point that we bring a customer into the experience, and then it's handed off to others to optimize it, our retention of them, increasing cross-sell and upsell for those customers. I have a very vested interest in all of that success every step down the funnel, because the more successful those team members are, the higher LTV that we get out of those customers, and the more headroom again that we get, like I was referring to earlier, that we can either use to go invest in scaling growth more effectively or drive to our goals of EBITDA, profitability, and top line revenue growth. Another key part of this too is making sure to empathize when you're working with these teams. Make sure you're listening to their needs, and you're not trying to sort of bully your way into things that are going to help your specific goals. As you do that, make sure you find your allies at the top, and if needed, in rare cases, find ways to plant the seeds to make them believe it's their idea. Sometimes that's what it takes to help bring things forward. And then all of that collectively will help you build your sphere of influence, grow your coalition, and then start to impact sort of the decisions of where you focus as a team. One thing that has been very successful for me in the past and prior roles as well is getting what I like to call a board seat on each other's roadmaps. So between growth product and growth marketing teams, as well as experienced teams within the app, being consulted to understand what's happening within their flows or their prioritization, give them context on what you're doing that may impact that as well, and then help have a stake in aligning on where there's points to drive greater continuity. In some cases, and this may be sort of hard for some teams, but I've even had cases where we have really excellent growth marketers who have been PMs on specific growth product programs, knowing that they had the greatest proximity to what the work was going to do to drive a better consistent experience from that ad to the onboarding experience. But the more that you can integrate and build camaraderie between those teams, the more amenable everybody will be to working together and then focusing on sort of these top line global maximums. So that's step 2. And then step 3 is all about delivery and execution. And I like to think about this as breaking through, reinforcing, educating, and then expanding. So one framework for this is really building a wedge and then landing and expanding that. So start with your hook, your way to break through to those prospective customers amidst the noise in this, very sort of busy space. Support that hook with reasons to believe, add more repetition and reinforcement for that customer of those reasons to believe, and then expand to the additional product benefits to really entrench that customer into a loyal, long-time advocate for you. And some examples for that. One is Acorns. Acorns started with a hook of investing your spare change. It really cuts through. And then it's supported through reasons to believe, fractional shares, diversified portfolio, fiduciary, civic insurance, things to address concerns and objections. It's repeated from ads to landing pages to onboarding, and then expanded to the rest of the benefits that Acorns offers customers across banking and investing. Chime also is a great example of this as well, starting with a wedge of a $500 cash advance supported by a direct deposit of the paycheck. And then it's repeated and reinforced throughout the onboarding experience. And then additional benefits continue to expand as Chime brings the customer into their ecosystem. So let's now sort of flip to some other real life examples and executions of how this can come to life and some tactical opportunities there. So if we think about some great examples at the earlier stage here, going back to Chime, here's an example of a Chime ad on Meta that is perfectly reinforced through a landing page. Open a Chime checking account in 2 minutes. We'll spot you up to $200. Reinforcement of the offer, consistent design, benefits of speed and efficiency. You see social proof on there, best banking app for beginners, repeated in both places, and strong CTAs above the fold, optimized for mobile. And throughout these experiences, you'll see I continue to focus on mobile, just given its dominance of traffic, typically over 80%. Now in Apple search ads, another great example here is one from Albert, where in their traditional organic core product page, they talk about top line benefits, budgeting and banking, all of your money in one place, organize, budget, and save. And all of that is above the fold, which is really critical. So customers can see that without looking at that full screenshot. Now, if I searched cash advance, though, within the App Store, all of a sudden you'll see they're using an Apple custom product page that says get up to $250 in minutes, no credit check, no interest. So they've really done a great job of being dynamic and focused on the customer intent. And I've seen time and time again from in-house and advising other clients that when you tailor this, you can consistently drive lifts of 5, 10, 15% or more versus focusing on this evergreen. And it's really an extension of what has been done for years on the search side, but now platforms like Apple have enabled that dynamic experience on app as well. Another one that's has a sort of a few more steps along the way is a journey from affiliates into registration. So here's an example where NerdWall is doing a review of Acorns. Somebody selects they're interested, they click on that link. There's the context reinforced of get excited, you're taking a step towards owning your financial future. That is, reinforced for the consumer. They get on the landing page, they're reminded of the context of where they're coming from. They're coming from NerdWallet, they have an offer, and if needed, they have the clear steps on what does it take to get the offer. And then when they finally say, I'm in, I'm ready to sign up, they're reinforced with, you are getting this offer, we're excited to have you. So that persistence of messaging is really, really strong. Now, the other thing I would flag here is you'll see within the incentives for Acorns, they're focused on recurring investments and building that habit and really aligning the incentives with the actions and the behaviors that they want of the customer. So I continue to implore, think about incentives in ways that really drive that habit, that sticky behavior that you want from the customer versus things that just get people into the door. And then in a paid search context, here's a great example, searching for a bank account. SoFi has a no account fee banking, $300 welcome offer, nearly identical language reinforced on the landing page, and then also the steps of how to get started if needed. But strong CTA above the fold, reasons to believe, proof points, social proof, etc. Another great example then of App Store into registration is from Rocket Money, where you can see they even highlight their social proof right away on that second screen within their screenshots. The app that will save you hundreds of dollars by Forbes, and then that's reinforced right above the CTA when they download the app. And then pulling that forward deeper into registration. Here's an example of Early Bird, which is a fintech app for young families with UGMA or UTMA accounts, which for those that don't know are tax advantage accounts for children. And working with them over the recent months, we found that sort of message is hard to land a customer. It's a really hard hook because there's not a lot of education and understanding of those sorts of products to parents today. And it's also a time that there is a lot on their mind. So we identified that leveraging these time capsule moments, these memory moments, is a far more effective hook to get a customer into the ecosystem. And then through that ecosystem, we can continue to reinforce and highlight other benefits and get them to a place then that they're ready to also start investing financially in their child, where we really own the relationship with the customer. And in this experience, Early Bird's been able to go from a 20% engaged parent rate from onboarding now to over 70%. So really, really big movement that's possible if you really walk through what's the customer journey, is there the comprehension, and do you need to think about different wedges to break through and then expand from there. Going a little bit further then into onboarding, again, going back to Acorns, here's an example to just show that reinforcement and action in an ad highlighting compound growth and the potential for customers as they think about investing their spare change. That same framework reinforced on a landing page. And then once they're in onboarding, again, reinforced for showing the potential of where their money can grow if they really commit to recurring investments. All of those things can help really significantly improve your conversion rates and your customer retention. Now, engagement, I'm going to share a little sort of more painful story, I should say. This is a real example from my Capital One account where I had a top notification, and Capital One, trying to keep me engaged and loyal, highlights exclusive access to tickets for James Beard Foundation. Okay, well, it's not maybe the great sort of UI and design, but let me go explore. Cardholder exclusives, interesting. Okay, oh wait, but it's in Houston. They know I don't live in Houston. Why am I getting showed Houston opportunities? I scroll further. okay, there's a filtering opportunity for me to pick the location. So I pick the location I'm in at the time, which was Chicago, to see my family. Again, it's not changing the experience for me. I would argue that this is a very poor experience for most consumers and has very low engagement. It's not personalized. It's not delivering on the value and the segmentation that you would expect that they would be able to have and know as a primary banking and credit relationship with you. Now, the final step, let's talk about engagement and advocacy. You have a customer engaged, you want to drive referral, and then you want to feed more people back into that onboarding experience from sort of that ad, that referral landing page, all the way through to becoming a loyal customer. Now, here's a final example from Acorns to highlight that experience that you see when you create an account. You'll see there's multiple points on these first three screens where we highlight the program, the incentive opportunities, and then from there, reinforce those points on the page for the referral program within the app. Consistency in the design elements, the fun squirrels, the messaging is just reinforcing that offer and those points. And then once somebody activates and decides to refer a friend, you see that continues. The squirrel concepts continue to come through. The offer is reinforced. The landing page is reinforcing that incentive, strong call to action above the fold, social proof, and then reinforcement of that incentive being applied as customers join to onboarding. So with all of that, I want to come back again to one of my sort of favorite frameworks that a former mentor of mine shared with me, which was strategy plus execution plus luck equals your outcomes. And as you think about the outcomes that you're responsible for within the organization, any of these can be working in your favor or against your favor. And if you have the best strategy and the best luck, but you haven't executed well and haven't put yourself in the customer's shoes, you're going to be missing opportunities. So I continue to reinforce that focus on execution and not lose sight of it and that customer journey to help you optimize your overall conversion rates, lifetime value, and help your businesses scale further. So with that, I will open it up to questions. Thank you all very much. Again, my name is Anthony, and you have my email address below. So let's go to the Q&A if I can. I'll stop sharing now.
So Anthony, there aren't any questions in the Q&A yet, but just want to remind everyone now is a good time. Like if you do have questions for Anthony, we'll be using the next 10-15 minutes to answer them. There was one question in the chat though from Chenna, who was referring to the previous slide with the equation with execution plus strategy plus luck equal outcomes, if I remember correctly. And she's wondering, is it luck or timing? Maybe you can talk a bit more about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. It can sometimes be timing in the investing landscape in particular. Sometimes there are cultural moments that you can't predict, and you have to decide how to act within those moments. I remember, I think it was before I joined Acorns, right before I joined was the great sort of meme stock moments of GameStop. And as you could see, all the investing apps rose to the top of the App Store. And there was a lot of great halo effect that was coming from that moment to get everyday Americans to start investing, which really helped benefit all brands. And so there's those sorts of positive moments that are totally independent of your strategy and execution, but then you have to rise to the occasion to take advantage of them. And then conversely, in cases where maybe there are market conditions or factors that are working against you, there's still opportunities to find how you can drive growth and own your strategy, own your story through that.
Okay, we now have some questions in the Q&A if you want to take a look. Let me know if you can see them.
Okay, yes, okay. First question, what split of roles do you recommend to cover the stages from ad to advocacy? One thing that I am strongly an advocate for is having sort of growth marketing talent really be the ultimate accountable owner of the ad creative that is coming to them all the way through to the landing page and app store experiences. So I feel strongly that those things, especially in a very agile environment, are best suited for being sort of ultimately owned by that person and then collaborating with others. But placing that accountability on them really ensures that they are thinking outside of a very sort of narrow swim lane, and make sure that they're thinking about what is the customer seeing and then where are they going, and how does that fit with their insights into marketing channels, targeting capabilities or limitations, because oftentimes others in those those partner roles may not understand all of those limitations or opportunities to make the best decisions. What recommendations do you have if your acquisition is going well, but after a certain amount of time, churn is equally high? That's a great question. On that one, I think one of the key principles is to de-average, de-average. And knowing there are still limitations on attribution, particularly for those who are in the mobile marketing space, use whatever frameworks possible for you to bucketing the different places that your customers are coming from. And you may, through that, understand that, well, your churn, either on your total base or your newest cohorts of customers that you've acquired, that's being driven by specific sources of marketing or programs or messages that have brought those customers in, versus it being a systemic, business problem or market problem. So I would really think about, understand if there's something sort of a few layers deeper below the blended metrics to really understand what's driving that. I've definitely been in cases where elevated churn has been responsible from a specific subset of our marketing mix. And it took us diving deep to understand what was driving that and then adjust, how we manage our media, how we manage our buying, how we manage our incentives to overcome that. And also, if all else is equal and there's nothing you can do there, I would say at least you have the insight on thinking about allocation within your growth strategy. If churn is focused from a certain source or low quality sort of partnership, then you can at least say, well, we're going to go shift dollars to those that have a greater sort of marginal return for us. Okay. The next question was, what methods do you use for tracking and recording a person's journey from ad to onboarding? In this case, I'd say you can be super scrappy. Sourcing the talent. I know there's different platforms that others have used. I don't have the names of the ones off the top of my head that my consumer insights partners within prior roles use, but there's some out there. But oftentimes it's literally then asking them to do a Zoom, sort of share their screen, record their screen while they talk through what they're seeing, and handing them, for example, well, first see this ad, tell us what you're thinking, what you understand or don't understand from it. And then you could even say, okay, now go to this specific link and then walk through all of the steps from there. So I don't think it has to be too complicated with, a tech stack or tools that you use. Okay. Next question. Where in the customer journey have you generally found it best to ask for a referral? Some schools of thought are better to ask for at the point of conversion, since enthusiasm is so high, while others believe that you should wait until when they have been onboarded or happy. That's a great question, Jason. So on this one, I think it definitely depends. I'm all for, when you know that there's moments of enthusiasm where your customers are most excited and delighted, those are great opportunities to refer. But the framework that I would think about to think about the prioritization is, what is the next best action for your customer to take for your business holistically? So again, this is about thinking as one team. Even if you're responsible for the referral program, you want to think about, okay, a customer has onboarded. Let's say maybe they haven't linked an account, and that's really critical. Do we want to focus on highlighting a referral program and really pushing that before they do something that we think is really highly associated to a LTV and reducing churn? Probably not. So you have to think about, what is that sequence of priorities that you as a company have for that customer to achieve the greatest lifetime value. And then I suspect through some modeling, you can identify, and through some split testing, you can identify, okay, this is a point at which for this segment of customers or all customers, they've reached a milestone that now we're excited for them to take this action because they've done enough things that we think really sets them up for success as a customer themselves. Okay. Uh, Next question. What are some best practices for stakeholder management in an organization that hasn't really practiced growth marketing, and the sub-org is new? How can we communicate that the CX or UX needs need to be improved and work with others to fix these? Great question. Okay. I think one thing that's really helpful is bring sources to sort of reinforce, right, the understanding and the point of view there. So I would continue to find ways to corroborate what you may know to be true, but comes from a neutral third party if that's the challenge. So help coach and train the team not only with your expertise, but through other sort of principles and things that can reduce the amount of trust from that individual they need to place in just you versus in sort of best practices, insights, other experts that can corroborate sort of your understanding and vision. Um, and I think sort of the other piece of that is, on communicating the CX or UX needs, I think you need to show the experience and you need to show what the customer sees. Nothing is more powerful than hearing from your customers. And I know sort of there's been prior roles where I've been in meetings where collectively with the CEO, we were sort of reading some testimonials and watching videos, and they were not pleased. And so if you can highlight some of those real customer experiences, you can get advocacy to go take action. It's the right thing to do intuitively, but it's also the right thing to focus on to move the needle. Okay, then we had another question on, outside of Acorns and some other fintech brands you mentioned, which brands you think are excelling in the customer journey? Yeah, I tried to hit on sort of multiple brands that I see are doing some really excellent things. I don't think I hit on Robinhood examples too much. There was one I didn't have time to share, but I think they are at an interesting point where they have done a lot of really good, but now they've gotten so large that there is some inconsistency that I see from different places. But I think that's another one worth seeking for inspiration. But all of that to say, yeah, it's there's no other ones that come top of mind, but it doesn't mean that they're not there. I just haven't got to spend as much time with them. Okay, how to bridge user journey across differences in large consumer finance conglomerates. Yes, this is probably the hardest case here, and I fully admit that. I think this is where that sphere of influence is going to be the most important thing. Um, I had an experience prior to my fintech experience where I was in a much larger organization. I was at Dish Network at the time, $14 billion company. I was one of 130 marketers. And the way that I was able to break through and really drive change as an entry level IC was driven by a few things. And this may be a little bit different in a remote environment, but there might be some helpful insights here. One was I made sure to try to build relationships with senior leadership when I could, even if I could just get a quarterly one-on-one with some of them to introduce myself, to learn from them for professional development, and get an opportunity to show my face and build those relationships. And then the second was in tandem with building those relationships, I tried really, really hard to demonstrate in every opportunity that I could with my peers and my superiors my understanding of the total business model, how my specific role laddered up to the goals that I know that they're thinking about, and they're judged by. And by doing that, I was able to build trust and stand out and able to then get a little bit more sort of, I guess, just latitude in my ability to influence decision making. And I think another thing that's really key is be good to others, be good to the other people, and build those relationships. There have been times that I have been in cases where something bad really happened. We made a big mistake. Technically, I could argue that it was not my fault, but I just raised my hand and owned it, and covered for others. And then that trust that they built helped me get so many other things after that moment done more quickly. And they're my allies in it. And some of that just comes with time. So I would say building relationships is really critical. I want to be cognizant of time. Eleanor, do we have time to keep going, or do we need to cut off?
It's up to you. I could go up to the top of the hour and
Okay.
answer like a few more questions, but really up to you. I want to be respectful of your time as well.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. Happy to keep going and fit in as much as we can. Okay. Next question. Do you mostly have to rely on observation of the end-to-end experience, or do you think there are opportunities for feedback to supplement and help explain the full quantitative model? Right. Not, this is not binary. It's a full spectrum. You have to triangulate through all the tools available to you. So I would say there are definitely, right, like other things that you should be doing as well. And frankly, I think the orientation is to just do those other things. All of those are key pieces. You have to focus on the math. You have to understand your model. You have to be able to go really deep, specifically on the tools and the capabilities within your onboarding experiences, your marketing channel opportunities for segmentation and personalization. All of those things, they're critical, and some of those things do get very, very deep and very narrow, but it's about marrying those things together. So if anything, my biggest takeaway, I think, for this group in this session today is uh, you're all likely doing great work. Now just pair that and take a step back and try to rally behind, let's go through these live experiences, see where we're finding those biggest pain points, share and disseminate that across the team, the broader team, to get allyship around this idea that we need to fix this and be more consistent, and then find the ways that work for you to get everybody working towards that together, while also using some more of those analytical and more focused tools. Okay, next question from Josh. How do you suggest using qualitative reasoning uh, to to make decisions on your acquisition adoption model? So from a qualitative perspective, I would say uh, I would say the customer interviews and those walkthroughs are critical. And then I think it's helping map those against those key metric points where you see customers have the most pain and confusion. And if, for example, a customer is having an acute pain when they are going from the point of registering to then onboarding, or maybe they're having a real point of pain on the pricing page, then you want to say, okay, well, what's opportunity size if we were able to move that 10%, 50% within your quantitative model, and then use that to inform, well, is the level of effort and the level of clarity and what needs to be fixed and overcome there, is the level of effort low enough and the confidence on what the solution is high enough in it, and then paired with that data to go say, yes, let's all go focus on this point, and let's figure out where in that step and the preceding steps we need to set the customer up so that when they get there, they are at the highest chance of opting in and converting, and building your testing agenda against that. So I really think, if anything, at the highest level, it's taking the qualitative to find those key points, and then saying, well, what if you can move the needle on those points by X percentage lifts that are reasonable based on your starting point and your level of confidence in how strong that or not strong that step is in the journey, and then do a sensitivity analysis off of that. All right. Next question. At what point in the strategy planning do you tie in creative and design team? At the beginning. I feel like this is like a seed question, seeded question. You want to bring the creative team into the process as soon as possible. The further along you are by the time you get to creative, the less opportunity for them to bring their expertise and their ideas to the table. And I think it's important on both sides. I've been also in organizations at times where the creative team was focusing on a big idea, but they didn't have the necessary context of how we buy media to go activate that, and what limitations or ways or opportunities we could think about for really sort of bringing the idea to life in a big way. So I think it's really important that you hook those teams in together at the beginning of the briefing process, or sort of the strategic alignment process for the week or the month or the quarter ahead. The more that they know the direction of where you're going, they can be sort of beneficial partners every step of the way. Okay. Next question. What strategies worked best for you to reduce sign-up drop-off rates, especially when multiple screens are required? Example for a loan application. Okay. Yeah, great question. One piece is context. So wherever possible, there's an example I didn't share today, but wherever possible, explain why you need this information, and if possible, explain the benefit to the customer of why you're getting on why you need this information. In some cases, it's just compliance, and it may be really hard to say more there and orient it towards the customer. But in a lot of cases, you can say things related to, by having this information, we're going to be able to give you a more personalized plan. We're going to be able to give you sort of the best rate possible. So these things are really critical to help get your desired goal, help meet your needs. And so the best ways that you can reinforce that across those steps of all the required fields is really critical. Another thing I would say here, there's two other things. One, social proof along the way at key points of pain. If there's lack of trust, it's an opportunity to also highlight testimonials or third-party badges and social proof, security measures. Those things I've seen drive non-insignificant lifts as well. And then lastly, a key point I want to make here is the number of screens is not the bad thing. It's number of screens does not equal friction. There are definitely opportunities where, and times that I've had where you add screens and the overall conversion rate actually improves. And it's about, is that screen create value and education, clarity to the customer, or does it create more friction? And asking people to enter in more and more fields is going to be very highly correlated to sort of lower conversion rates. But asking them or highlighting an additional screen that says, here's what's coming up, we're going to provide all of this value to you, it's going to be great, or setting expectations for what is in store for the customer, or outlining the customer benefits before you drop the customer into the app, especially if the app doesn't have a really strong onboarding flow. All of those things, even though it's more screens, can be beneficial and actually improve overall conversion, in first 7-day or first 30-day retention rates. Okay, next question. Do you have any references, ranges of conversion rates from registration to onboarding and onboarding to engagement for financial services? That's a good question. I don't. I think when I was looking at revenue cat data, it was hard for me to find financial services specific category data, although it seems like they have some great broad data overall for app-based brands. The other tool that I had used in the past was Data AI for some app trends. And what I was able to do there was I was often looking at, install rates and then MAU rates and sort of other proxies for active users to look at some sort of prediction of churn. I was looking at those things for some of the overall like conversion rate sort of metrics but as it got a little bit deeper than that, I don't have anything sort of too great there. I would also definitely recommend following a lot of the mobile MMP brands and others who continue to release reports that sometimes can get into some breakdowns here on benchmarks. But if you know of any great ones, anonymous attendee or others, please share my way as well. It'd be great to know. All right, next question. How do you keep customers interested when the benefits to your service do not kick in for 30 days? Oh, this is an interesting question. I'm trying to think of like the context of where there's no benefit to the customers before 30 days. Um, I guess the first thing that just comes to mind is how can you create benefit in those 30 days? So if you're truly in a space that there's nothing of value for the customer before that milestone, can you develop some experience before then? And that can be as simple as, can you develop an educational experience, or maybe a game experience to keep them engaged, that does provide value, whether it's entertainment or education, ideally both. If you can deliver education or entertainment in that interim period, that's an opportunity to sort of still set them up for success, or expand, your product benefits. All right, and then a last question. What are some best practices for optimizing landing pages apart from having the CTA above the fold? Great question. On this one, we talked about a few. CTA above the fold. You want to have it so that page can live in and of itself. It doesn't need people to scroll. So outside of the CTA, I would also think about reinforcing very clear benefits to the customer so they know what they're getting themselves into, mapping to the context of the prior ad or touch point that they were in before. I would also use third-party social proof validation where possible, whether it's sort of badge form or quotes, or third-party logos that you can get, App Store sort of ratings, or general sort of 5-star reviews, 4-star plus reviews that you can use. Real testimonial quotes from customers when it makes sense is another key element. And then depending on the brand and the space that you're in, also some very clear visual cues that tie back to it. I often sometimes see lifestyle imagery or things that are a little disjointed, and I see that as just missed real estate to get more to the functional benefits and clarity that reinforce what you're trying to offer the customer. And this is something, to be fair, I think is specific to financial services. Things like lifestyle imagery may be a lot more compelling and relevant in other industries, but in the fintech space, showing somebody happy on their phone, looking at their credit card statement, is not going to be the thing that gets you to convert a customer. So just focus on, oh, it's a really great UI, or I get great visibility into my expenses, or there's these sorts of tools. You don't have to think, I think, as in sort of that way in a financial context. I haven't seen that win ever, except when it's paired. It's a real person paired with their testimonial quote. So, all right, that's what I got. I think we got through all the questions just on time at the ringer. But thank you, everybody, so much. I hope this was really helpful for you all. And it was great to get to present and share some of my thoughts.